Hey everyone, my name's Lily and I'm the book blogger behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm going to bring you my April wrap-up. Before I talk about the books, let's talk a little bit about where I've been. I've been a little bit absent on YouTube, definitely absent on TikTok, a little bit absent on YouTube as well though. I have just been so burnt out. I don't know if you have seen the panel announcements that I have up. I have a few that are like in the works, I guess. But I also have ones where I've uploaded the details, but I haven't really publicly screamed about it yet. It was just kind of brought to light, I guess, how many I have in June, and that has just kind of set me back. I've been trying to read a lot to make up for it, and also I went on vacation at the end or at the middle of April, and knowing I was going to go on the vacation, I did a lot of work. I pushed really hard. I pushed a little too hard, I think, and then after the vacation, I was super burnt out. And to be honest, I feel like I've been in a more or less burnt out phase for like the last couple of years. That was just kind of not great. And so a lot of things went on the wayside. I wasn't really filming anything like at all. Wasn't putting makeup on my face, period. And I'm back tentatively. I have been posting 2 times a week basically since I started, or almost since I started. But I think part of the reason that I really was struggling was that I had to really change my expectations and let go of this idea about staying to that consistent schedule. So I want to say, oh, like, I'm back. I'm going to be posting a bunch now. It's kind of not this kind of announcement video. I am just back now and have really... I mean, I say this every video, and I've said this every, like, yearly wrap-up, basically, but I really need to think about how my expectations with being online, but also kind of my productivity expectations are affecting my body, my mental health, my sense of worth and sense of self, you know, like these really big, uncomfortable questions. So that's where I've been. I still had a really great April reading month, but I feel like April has just flown by. I don't even really remember April as a whole. And I think that that's part of why I'm really kind of been like, okay, maybe I just need to focus for May and June and the rest of the summer basically on just what I need to do, and then see what I want to do on top of that, instead of piling all these other things on and being like, oh, you need to do all of these things, and if some things I don't end up doing, then I don't end up doing, and kind of change my mental idea about it. I don't know if that makes any sense. But anyway, those are the things that I've been thinking about, and that's why I haven't been here. So that was a very long kind of intro. Sorry about that. And let's just chat about books. So I don't have all 31, you heard me right, 31 books that I read in front of me. I only have these ones. Here we go. I'm trying to get, like, the glare where I'm filming is not great. So these are the ones that I have that I read from April. So my tiny, tiny pile. And let's just get into this. I read, of the 31 books, 57% of these books had characters of color. Feel so good about that. Only 17% of them had queer characters. I wish this was higher. Last month, because I'm looking also at my piece of paper, which shows me last month. Last month, I did a lot better in general. Trying to just let it wash over me. Let's chat about favorite books. This is the section that takes the longest amount of time, but is always some that I really enjoy. But still, I try to keep it very brief, and in general, that's what I'll try to do. Let's start with middle grade. Let's just work our way up in terms of, you know, reading age. The first one is Witchlings. I adored Witchlings so much. I've loved Claire Bell's past books, Ghost Squad. It's up there. I don't want to get it, but it's up there. And so I had super high expectations going into Witchlings and just like totally smashed through them. Witchlings is just such a cute and precious emotional book about feeling like you don't belong and you don't fit in, and like the prejudice and the treatment of it, because she is a spare, the main character, whose name is Seven. Seven is a spare, and so it's not only her own internalized sort of feelings about being a spare, but also how she's being treated by the world. I felt like there are so many very smart, like, metaphorical stuff that you could kind of talk about with witchlings, and I like started to in my brain, and then my brain was like, no, like I can't right now. But witchlings is just emotional because of the treatment of Seven, and also what she's going through kind of herself. It's an emotional story about family. There's also conspiracy, and there's tons of actions. Like, it is a perfect read for middle grade audiences. I mean, all of these books that I'm mentioning are obviously gonna be perfect reads that I think you all should read. So that's that. The next one that I read was Winnie Zhang Unleashes a Legend by Katie Zhao. I love this one so much. Huge hopes. Katie, like, just crushes it with middle grade, especially. I also, you know, if I was more prepared, The Dragon Warrior and The Fallen Hero were probably the first books I read of Katie's at all. I have not, unfortunately, read Last Gamer Standing. It's the only Katie Zhao book I have not read. But Winnie Zhang Unleashes a Legend was just so fun in the ways that it talks about prejudice, but also the ways that it talks about action. And there's just a beautiful, like, balance between humor and wit and emotion and, like, action. It's just, Katie does a fantastic job with middle grades. I would just recommend all of Katie's middle grades because they're just so full of heart and full of, like, this feeling of being swept up in an action, and they're just so gorgeous. What I also really loved about Winnie is that Winnie talks a lot about feeling like you have to measure up to other people's expectations and not really being sure about who you want to be and what your own kind of future ambitions and expectations are, and specifically when it comes into parental expectations, I think is a huge theme in Winnie. And so that one was just, I can just imagine all of these middle grade books finding really gorgeous, like, precious moments within middle grade readers' hearts. And so that is another reason why I love Winnie Zhang. The next one is Kiki Clara Breaks a Kingdom. I'm currently reading the series, like the next one, so I keep getting the titles mixed up, but I think it's Kiki Clara Breaks a Kingdom. And this, I just love this one. Like, not only was the anxiety rep in this book so fabulous, this is another one where it's like, please, middle grade readers, find your story. This is fabulous. The anxiety rep in this one was so beautifully done, not only because Kiki is thinking about all of these, like, worries in her life, and then, like, a magical story unfolds and the worries kind of just increase. I think it had really great conversations about mental health and mental illness specifically. That was fantastic. And then second of all, what I really love as well about Kiki Clara is that it really focuses on finding your own ability and capability and power. And specifically this idea, I feel like, that when you're in a middle grade, all these characters and main characters kind of rise to the occasion. They end up finding their magical powers or fighting capabilities, whatever that is. You know, it's not necessarily, you know, the most amazing, but they end up finding their way. And I feel like Kiki is really struggling because she doesn't really feel like she's finding anything that she's good at. And so I felt like this book was just so relatable in a variety of different ways. I feel like if I was in a story, Kiki would kind of be who I'd be. And I thought that this idea about struggling with power, and specifically when you feel like you don't have power and you don't know what your own capabilities are, was just really, it resonated with me in this book. The next one, let's just chat about YA contemporaries. I have two favorites. First one is Queen of Tiles. This one is like Scrabble competition meets murder mystery meets unreliability, ? This one was fabulous. If you really love suspense books, I feel like Queen of Tiles does an amazing job. I think I ended up reading Queen of Tiles in like a matter of days. I was so obsessed. I normally plan out my reading kind of like, oh, I'm going to read this much of this and this much of this. And I think when I was reading Queen of Tiles, I was like, no, I think I'm just going to read Queen of Tiles only, exclusively. And then I powered through it. Like, it was just so obsessive, like so compulsively readable. The mystery and the suspense in it were like fantastic. And I've read this author's previous books, I think, were like The Weight of the Sky, something like that, and also The Girl and the Ghost. So I've read other things, and while there were definitely suspenseful elements in it and lots of action, I felt like in Queen of Tiles, it just excels in like everything that I thought about it. I knew I was gonna love it, but I don't think I was prepared for how much I was going to love Queen of Tiles. It is like my latest recommendation if you really love suspense, if you love competitions, if you like obsessively watched not Queen of Tiles, The Queen's Gambit, and you love this like high action suspense sport-ish competitions, definitely have to read Queen of Tiles. The next one is A Show for Two. This one was just so heart-wrenchingly stunning. I love the premise of like a celebrity who goes undercover at a school and then is kind of like forced to figure out how, you know, us non-celebrities work and like how we attend classes. And so I loved that premise as well. But I think what I loved about Show for Two was that it really delves into kind of what we were talking about earlier with Winnie. It really delves into family expectations and the burden of family expectations and like that tension and conflict in a really gripping way that was kind of hard to read at sometimes, but it was just so impactful. And I felt like A Show for Two was just a book that was like an emotional roller coaster. There are these highs of falling in love, question mark, of friendship and of sister relationships, and there are these lows of the, you know, all of those things kind of just in low form. So I felt like A Show for Two had such gorgeous character dynamics and such like impactful. It was weird. It strikes us a great balance between being a light kind of romantic movie. Wait, this is where I am right now. Being a light romantic, also swoony kind of story, while also being very, very important conversations about family expectations and going on your own path and having your own different ambitions. So that was amazing. The next one is I have a bunch of sci-fi fantasy favorites from April. I always think of like April, May, June, July, August as kind of summer romance moods. And the last book will be one of those, even though I don't think it released till September, but it will give you that vibe. But let's just go into sci-fi fantasy. The first one is Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves. This is kind of like an Iditarod inspired sci-fi survival story. If you love any of those things, like, you definitely should read it. I really enjoyed the competition element of Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves. And I also really love the relationship that she has with her wolf, like her wolf companion friend. And I also really loved how it was like found family / found friendship as well in these high stakes sci-fi world. The sci-fi world felt really vivid as well. It was just one of those books that like, I felt like it's been a really long time since I've been pulled into a sci-fi world and kind of not let go of, or however you want to describe that, honestly. But I felt that way with Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves. I just kind of was like instantly absorbed, and then I read the book, and now I'm kind of just still reeling from it. The next one is Sophie and the Bone Song. I actually have a copy of Sophie and the Bone Song here. This gorgeous musical magic book was just like, it was about falling in love, but it was also about really intense things like parental abuse. Definitely check out the trigger warnings. Parental abuse, this idea about like suffering creating art, and this like, what do you do if you're not suffering? Isn't suffering the whole motivation for art? Like, that was a question that was delved into in Sophie and the Bone Song. And this idea about people who are supposed to love you and protect you and help you, but then end up like doing it in such an emotionally manipulative, abusive kind of way. That was this book, but it was also so much about finding our own potential and our own power and our own voice. Like, there were just so many gorgeous things that I wanted to talk about in Sophie and the Bone Song. I'll leave all my full reviews down below, but it was just phenomenal. Like, if you really love music magic, you have to read it. If you love queer fantasy, you have to read it. And also, if you really love a story about a main character finding their voice and finding their own power and wading through all of the like trauma and past history and family, BS. This was it. The next one is Beauty and the Becher. I don't know why I have this one in the fantasy section because it was a contemporary, so let's just pretend that it was in the other one. But I really love Beauty and the Becher because I felt like the main character and I would have gotten along really well. Basically, it's just like former friends / rivals to romance, basically. And I really love the main character. Is always described as being too much. And for, the people who call her that, it is very much described as kind of like a negative quality. And as someone I feel like who could be described as like too much, I felt like this main character really resonated with me and resonated with the way that like people will kind of look down on other people for having this passionate drive or having these desires and having these hobbies that everyone doesn't really have, or like they're throwing themselves into full-heartedly. And I think that a lot of this idea about being like too much or being like too outspoken, too outgoing, too in your face, I feel like a lot of this is actually stemming from like wish fulfillment and kind of like, ugh, that person's too much, but they actually wish that they could be a little bit more like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like internalizing that or whatever. But anyway, that is why I love this book so much, because it's about the main character who is really struggling with this idea about being like too much and what it means, and trying to find someone or find people in her life who can support her and love her and like, just be around her, who see the true essence of who she is and are not like cringing away from it. So that one got to me. I guess going back to the sci-fi fantasy category, the next one was See You Yesterday, which is set in college in this like Groundhog Day time loop. So it's very much kind of a book set in contemporary, but it also has this sci-fi time loop quality to it, which is why I put it in the sci-fi fantasy. Although if you really kind of had to, nail down a sort of categorization for me, I guess I would do contemporary. But I love time loops. I love time travel. So See You Yesterday was like amazing. Rachel Land Solomon is kind of like an auto-buy author for me. So I had really high hopes for See You Yesterday, and Rachel just like completely demolished them. It was just if you really liked the movie Palm Springs, you have to read See You Yesterday, because I watched Palm Springs a while ago, and while I was reading See You Yesterday, I was kind of just like, oh my god, this is giving me the same vibes. It's so amazing. And I feel like I haven't really seen that many movies about time loops, honestly, since Groundhog Day. And so this thrilled all of these parts of my heart, and like these parts of my heart that have been dormant for a while, and kind of Rachel and Solomon brought them back to life. It is just such a gorgeous also book about being afraid and about being vulnerable, or being afraid to be vulnerable, and about falling in love, and about like confronting these really hard truths about ourselves. It was just fantastic. It made me cry. It also made me laugh a bunch. If you love witty banter, and to me, honestly, that's very characteristic of Rachel and Solomon's writing, character banter, A+, chef's kiss. It is just so good in See You Yesterday, and that's definitely why I have to recommend it. And the final one in this category is Not Good for Maidens. Not Good for Maidens is a queer YA fantasy retelling of The Goblin Market. I remember reading The Goblin Market in college and just being absolutely transfixed by this idea of desire and fantasy and how they kind of interact. And so Tori has brought such life and such fantastical horror and suspense to the Goblin Market story, and also to Not Good for Maidens. It's kind of like a dual timeline. It's definitely dual POV, but it's definitely dual timeline, I guess, because one of the characters is an older character, and she's kind of talking about these memories from this other time. So it's like, is that dual timeline? Is it more like memories? I'm not really sure. Either way, it's fantastic. It's like these story... I can't describe how much I love this book. Like, I was so hyped for it because Goblin Market is one of these poems that I adore, and I felt like I was really expecting Tori to do a fantastic job, and I cannot explain to you how much I love Not Good for Maidens. If you love queer YA fantasy that also borders a little bit on suspenseful and also horror, like, you have to read it. It is so good. It was a story about family and sacrifice and like this feeling about not belonging and what we'll do to belong. It is fabulous. This was another one kind of like Queen of Tiles where I was kind of like, well, I'm just gonna read Not Good for Maidens, see where it takes me, completely not read other books until I finish. And so I guess that explains why April is kind of gone how it's gone. Next, I want to talk about my last pick, which is Lizzie Blake's Best Mistakes. This comes out in September, but basically I got the e-arc of this and I was like, I have to read this. I love it so much. I have to read this. I really loved Brush with Love, and I didn't think that I was going to love a story by Maisie Eddings more, but I do. It has such different... So it's basically a companion novel in the sense that it's in the same world and kind of friend group as Harper and Dan, but it's definitely a different vibe. Whereas A Brush with Love was like super slow burn, I feel like, and super angsty and tension filled. Lizzie Blake's Best Mistakes, kind of the opposite in the best way. It is a story about Lizzie. Lizzie is a character that just like ripped my heart out. Lizzie has ADHD, and so finding these ways for her ADHD and her world and her goals and her friends and like her family to, and also romantic partners, like all of these people, to acknowledge her ADHD and how it's part of her and not like something that she just has, you know, like it's intrinsically a part of who she is. That just ripped my heart out. Lizzie's and Rake's like dynamic in Lizzie Blake's Best Mistakes was just really gorgeous, but I think the reason why I loved this the most was just Lizzie. Like, Lizzie was fabulous. Rake was also a really great love interest, and it is dual perspective, so it's not like he's just a love interest. But Lizzie Blake's Best Mistakes, and Lizzie Blake specifically, was the reason why I loved this book so much. And it just was one of those books where I would keep coming back to it over and over again. I mean, like, after I would finish it and go to sleep, and I'd wake up and be like, I just want to read this book. Like, I just want to wake up, read this book before I go to sleep, wake up, read, sleep, repeat. Basically, that was me. It just completely fascinated me, and it completely made me feel things in my really cold heart. I kind of feel like I have a really cold heart. Maybe that's not true, but that's kind of how I felt. And so Lizzie Blake's Best Mistakes, it just melted me. I am now a puddle. For May, puddle me. I'm a puddle. So basically, those are my favorite reads of April. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry that it actually did end up going quite a long time. But I ended up reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Almost half, honestly, of the April releases did I really like love and need to recommend to you. I also really loved a bunch of other books, but these ones were my standout, like, you have to read it. I try not to include some sequels into this one, but if I did, I would have talked about the Genesis Wars and how much I loved this book after the Infinity Courts, but I can't really talk about it because there's a lot of spoilers, so just know that. But anyway, I hope you had a really great time reading this one. Wow! Watching this video. I hope you had a really great time watching this video. And I hope to see you with more frequency, I guess, in the next couple weeks / rest of the year, maybe. Anyway, let me know what some of your favorite reads for April were for April. And have a really great reading day, week, month, year. Until I see you again. Bye.